This book is the inspiring true story of one of the fittest men in the world, David Goggins. These flashes delve into the most important events in the life of this inspiring athlete and military man, while also providing insight into the interior of an alert and unbreakable mind. For many American children, childhood is an exciting time filled with play, safety, and parental love. But, unfortunately, things did not work out that way in David Goggins' life. Born in New York in 1975, Goggins never knew the simple joys of childhood. Instead, from the age of 6, Goggins was a slave to his tyrannical father, Tranus, along with his mother and older brother. Tranus was a self-made businessman who owned an ice skating rink and had only individuals working for him. His staff were only members of his family. Goggins' father took his wife and children to his skating rink almost every night of the week, where he had them work tirelessly until midnight. David's job was to take care of his skates between the ages of 6 and 8, and his mother would cook dinner on a hot plate at the rink's office. After the kids finally finished work around midnight, they would sleep in the office as well. Unfortunately, the loud music coming from the dance floor made sleep nearly impossible, leaving Goggins constantly falling asleep at school and unable to concentrate on his lessons. This disgusting brutality of Goggins' father made life absolutely unbearable with the exhausting routine of school and late work, both of which were already unacceptable for any young child. David often witnessed his father hitting his mother with a belt when she dared to disobey his orders. When David contracted a disease in his ear one time, his mother took him to the hospital, but Tranus hated spending money on his family, even when his children's health was at risk. When his mother returned from the hospital, Tranus beat her, and whenever David tried to intervene to protect her, he was beaten as well, often hiding the bruises and red spots caused by his father's belt. When David was 8 years old, he and his mother escaped from their tormentor. His mother convinced her husband to let her get a credit card in her name, and with the help of a sympathetic neighbor, she planned their escape. After leaving the Tranus house in a hurry, David and his mother drove to a small town called Parasail, Indiana. There they began a new life without Tranus, but their newfound freedom was incomplete. Why? Because David's older brother decided to stay with their father despite his cruelty, which meant that David barely got to see him after they left home. David's life in Indiana, unfortunately, will not be without hardship either. Goggins may have been able to escape his violent father, but that does not mean that the rest of his childhood was easier. He would spend the rest of his formative years in small-town Indiana, struggling with poverty and the ghosts of his past. Once the initial euphoria of their escape from Tranus wore off, David and his mother faced a harsh new reality. They were suddenly living in abject poverty. Tranus refused to give his wife and child more than a small sum to support themselves in this new life. David and his mother lived in a public housing complex where they paid $7 a month in rent, and the mother made ends meet with a part-time job and monthly welfare of $123. As if poverty wasn't enough of a challenge, The psychological effects of David's early years began to become evident when he was in 3rd grade. David suffered from a nervous stutter. His hair began to fall out, and patches of his skin lost color as a result of years of suffering at the hands of his father. Why did this happen as an adult? David realized that he was suffering from severe psychological pressure. This is a phenomenon where young children who have experienced severe abuse in the past experience long-term changes in their brain chemistry, resulting in a constant state of fight or flight. David experienced such severe suffering that his brain and body are now on constant high alert for danger. As David quickly discovered, a devastating side effect of constant stress is that it reduces our ability to recall childhood memories. When suffering from this condition, children, even the most gifted ones, will find it difficult to remember things they previously learned at school. This was demonstrated in David's case by being labeled stupid by some teachers. In addition, David was the only black child in his class and was now facing daily scolding and ridicule. David began doing the only thing he could think of to survive. He began cheating on his schoolwork and on important standardized tests to avoid the possibility of being expelled from school and placed in special needs care. What was the result? His inattentive teachers allowed him to stay in school, but his academic results kept getting worse as David approached his teenage years. He could barely read without anyone else knowing. When David was a teenager, he still had the same difficulty learning, but in his late adulthood, he found a tangible goal that became the direction of his life. And that was the idea of joining the United States Air Force. His hopes of becoming a military man pushed him to toil and learn to read, and he was accepted into Air Force training. But unfortunately, his path to success will not be easy. David's dream was to become an Air Force rescue pilot, a special type of soldier who specializes in parachuting into war zones and rescuing injured pilots. David had to face his toughest test yet to complete his swimming training. David's mother could not afford swimming lessons. He was barely 12 years old before he could see a swimming pool. For the first time in his life, this meant that he did not have the necessary swimming ability to enable him to begin military training. Extremely frightened and facing increasingly difficult swimming challenges, David decided to give up when a routine medical test revealed possible anemia. David used it as an excuse to step away from the Army for medical reasons. He knew he had to stay and fight and challenge himself, even as he left, but fear got the better of him. David was 24 years old by 1999, and after the failure of his military hopes, David was working a fruitless job as an exterminator at night and using food as a way to numb his disappointment. David's weight increased from 255 pounds after his discharge from the Air Force to nearly 300 pounds after his ability to control what he ate got out of control. The first thing David did, once the bug extermination shift was over, was to stop on his way home, to drink a chocolate milkshake and eat a box of cookies. Just his first breakfast. He would drive to his mother's house afterward, where she would prepare his usual morning meal. His breakfast was absurdly heavy, consisting of 8 cinnamon rolls, 6 eggs, 10 slices of bacon, and copious amounts of sugary cereals, Unfortunately, David was using food to deal with the harsh realities in his life, that he was uneducated and untalented and was inevitably headed toward a dead-end future. The motivation he needed to change his humble life was closer than he thought. Fortunately, one morning after another huge breakfast, Goggins saw something on television that changed his life forever. It was a documentary about Marines in training. The Navy is viewed as the best and most elite fighting force in the world, and training Marine forces is considered the most difficult in the world, and only the best are able to succeed. Goggins was amazed as he watched the Marines brave mud, sweat, and tears with their mental toughness and determination to fight, through their endurance of hardship and their keenness on physical fitness. As a result, Goggins wanted to join the Navy more than ever before. He spent the next few weeks contacting Navy recruiting offices around the United States seeking an opportunity to train. Fortunately, there was a training program open to former military recruits who wanted to rejoin the Navy. Goggins was told he could use this training program to join the Navy, but unfortunately there was our problem first. This program will close in 3 months. Secondly, Goggins' weight did not qualify him to join the Navy. The maximum weight allowed was 191 pounds, and he weighed the equivalent of 297. This meant that he had less than 3 months to lose more than 100 pounds if he really wanted to have even the slightest hope of participating in the Navy. And Goggins began working tirelessly. Over the next 3 months, he established a rigorous fitness regime, waking up at 4:30 a.m. every day and immediately starting a 2-hour bike workout. Then, Goggins would drive to the nearest pool and swim for 2 hours. He then goes to the gym to perform an intense workout. That includes circuit training and at least 5 sets of 200 exercises. Pertaining to all muscle exercises, Goggins would return to the exercise bike for another few hours. After finishing his gym exercises, after this, he returns to the bike again to exercise for an additional 2 hours after dinner. Within 2 weeks, Goggins lost 25 pounds. Within 1 month, he began adding for miles to his daily routine. When the registration deadline came, Goggins was suitable for training. He joined the program and underwent a grueling training period that included going for 5.5 days without getting enough sleep and completing difficult exercises in which he was submerged in water and covered in sand. However, Goggins continued to resist and graduated from training, eventually achieving his dream of joining the Navy. Goggins fulfilled his ambition to become a Marine, but after a few years, he found himself thirsting for new challenges. What would be able to test his physical abilities to the limit, the same way that Navy training had enabled him to achieve them? Goggins found the answer in 2005, the ability to run very long distances or run ultramarathons. Goggins began running to support a noble cause. He decided to raise money for the families of several of his fellow Marines who were killed in a military operation in Afghanistan. This will enable him to combine charitable work with his quest to complete the toughest running race on earth. He called the race he chose the Badwater Marathon. It is a race that is 135 miles long and includes the most difficult elevations and the most extreme temperatures. compared to any other race in the world. It is known as an ultramarathon. It begins below sea level in Death Valley, California, and ends at an altitude of 8,374 feet. As if that wasn't enough, the Badwater Marathon always takes place in July when Death Valley is the hottest on Earth, and top competitors complete the course in less than 48 hours. Race organizers required Goggins to qualify for the marathon by competing in another 100-mile race before he could compete in the Badwater 135. Therefore, Goggins was determined to win the San Diego one day, a 100-mile race through the heart of the city. Goggins was able to complete the first race without any special training at all. The only exercise he had done to prepare the previous year was 20 minutes of exercise on a treadmill in the gym each week, and although he suffered greatly along the way and lost his bladder and bowel control due to extreme fatigue, he completed the race in 9. Only 10 hours later, he even ran an extra mile to make sure he actually finished the marathon. Following this victory, Goggins was accepted as a competitor in the Badwater 135 for the 2006 tournament. He trained well in preparation for the race. Not only did Goggins carefully study the terrain he would be running, but he also trained himself for the same intense heat as the race. All his training paid off during the race, as Goggins completed the Badwater 135 in just 30 hours, placing 5th in the race. People often ask Goggins how they can become as successful as him, given that he is the only African American to have made it into the Navy, and in addition, he is a unique ultra runner. His first piece of advice boils down to one thing: the importance of work ethic. It is sad today that our society has become completely addicted to quick fixes that Goggins believes, on the other hand, that if you want to develop yourself and harness your true potential, there is no quick fix for it. Only hard work. You may have a lot of talent and passion, but without the right work ethic, you are like a bird without wings. You will never be able to fly. Goggins' willingness to work hard is the deciding factor in each of his accomplishments. Whether it's working out in the gym or serving in the Navy, hard work is the biggest priority in his life, and everything else comes second. Interestingly, when Goggins tells people about the importance of hard work, they usually explain that they don't have enough time to work long hours to achieve their goals. Instead, they say they should focus on spending enough time with their families or working at their office jobs. But Goggins does not accept this excuse. He believes that all these doubters need to seize the morning. Goggins was able to accomplish so much because he woke up early to do it. You should also wake up early to have a similar chance of success. A typical day in Goggins' life begins with waking up at 4 a.m. and then going for a run of between 1 and 10 miles. Thanks to his early departure, he can be home by 5:15 a.m. and then be ready to shower and eat breakfast. Goggins then bikes 25 miles to work, arriving at his office by 7:30 a.m., and the strict fitness regime doesn't stop there. During his lunch break, Goggins finds time to work out at the gym or run another 6 miles on the nearby beach. Goggins bikes home again after work, and by the time he returns at 7 p.m., he finds time to bike an additional 50 miles, run at least 10 miles, and work a 9-to-5 office job. Wake up early tomorrow morning and start pushing yourself, because if David Goggins can do it, you can too. David Goggins was able to overcome a violent childhood and emerge from it with a dream of joining the army. He eventually became known as a brilliant ultramarathon runner and a successful Marine after overcoming difficulties in swimming and losing significant weight. It is possible to emulate Goggins' success. It takes an unparalleled amount of hard work and the ability to wake up early in the morning. We have reached the end of the summary. I hope it will be useful to you. This book changed my life completely, and I hope you read.